So I don't know if you've heard, but the United States of America is turning 250 years old this weekend. So I'm an American that is watching all of this hoopla unfold from the UK. And I'm realizing some things that never really occurred to me while I lived there. Here's something that I get asked about more than anything else, to be honest, the smile. The have a nice day enthusiasm of a stranger who you'll probably never see again, but is acting like you're going to be their best friend for life. For British people, they see this as being fake. And while I do agree that it is a little bit of a performance, I don't think it's the exact same thing as being fake. In the United States, warmth is part of our social contract. You bring your best self to every interaction, even with strangers, because that's kind of what holds the fabric of the country together. It's not about one transaction in particular. It's more about this like ambient agreement that we're all miserable, but we're going to try our hardest to make this as bearable as possible for each other. Which, funny enough, seems to be the same justification that a lot of British people give me for their version. That whole British politeness thing. All I have to say is British politeness can read as just as performed as American fakeness to me. The sorry that isn't actually sorry, the we must get together sometime that you never intend to speak to that person again. In the end, I don't think they're all that different. In my opinion, at least, when an American smiles at you, warmth was the intention. Look, Americans are loud. I'll give you that. I'm not going to dispute it. Put myself in that camp as well. From the outside, I understand how being loud seems like we're a little bit unaware or selfish and basically taking up space that wasn't exactly offered. But here's what I figured out. The volume isn't the same as being oblivious. It's more like openness, in my opinion. I think Americans just like to talk to strangers. I'm going to be honest, I love living here in the UK, but I have to admit that there is something really exhausting about living in a culture where enthusiasm kind of has to constantly be earned before it's allowed to be expressed. And I find myself a lot of the time just trying to figure out if someone actually likes me or what they really mean because they'll never just tell you outright. So, in my opinion, I don't know if the loudness is necessarily the problem. I think it's just a different set of social cues. See, this one, I must admit, I couldn't really see fully until I lived somewhere that actually had functioning safety nets, which are almost non existent in the United States of America, especially depending on what class you're from, how much money you make, what area you're from, all of that. In the United States, money isn't a personality trait, it's more like a life raft. You need it all the time for everything: healthcare, education, retirement, to survive, basically. You need it to absorb anything unexpected that's inevitably going to happen because their system's almost inherently rigged against the normal, average, everyday person. The obsession with money isn't necessarily about greed. It's entirely a rational response to knowing that without it, you are just one bad diagnosis away from losing everything. The materialism thing is about the status. Because in the United States of America, if you don't have status, you have nothing. So even though it is kind of a plastic way to show yourself and show that you can fit into this area or into this little community or this segment of the United States, it's still something that a lot of Americans strive for inherently, because if you don't have that status, you will definitely be left behind. It's what happens when a society decides that you surviving is your problem and we're not going to really help you unless you reach a certain threshold. Then we'll jump in and circle the wagons around you. But until then, it's up to you to get to that point. The obsession, I think, is more of a symptom of a system that is actually riddled with disease. In the United States, being busy is a personality. It's a personality that we're told we need to adopt in order to be successful. being stressed is almost proof that you're actually serious about becoming someone, that you're serious about being successful and achieving something. It's that baseline urgency that you stop noticing. A lot of people who have never worked for an American company or in an American setting don't fully understand all of the implied consequences that come along with everyday work life. There's so many things that are just kind of understood that if you don't do them, you are definitely going to see something negative happen to you in the long run. And that if you don't go above and beyond on a regular basis and make work your priority, eventually you're going to have either no success or you're going to have no money. And as we talked about in the previous segment, that can be detrimental. That could literally be the meaning of life and death for you or your family. When I got here to the UK, people left at the end of their day routinely. They took all their holiday. You were hounded if you didn't take your holiday. Like you had to have it scheduled out so they could plan ahead. And my first instinct, I'm not gonna lie, was everyone's lazy. They're not working hard enough. That's how deep that implication is in American culture. And I think that we don't understand how people live outside of that because it's all we know in the United States. If you're not hustling, you're falling behind or you're flawed in some way. I built my entire life around that thought, just accepting it because that's the way it was. But seeing it differently didn't just change my opinion, it gave me a new way to live. Listen, when you grow up in the United States of America, patriotism is shoved down your throat. It's the water that you swim in, flags on front lawns, hands on hearts, Pledge of Allegiance before you're old enough to know what allegiance means. It doesn't feel like ideology, it just feels like normal everyday life. And while I fully agree that a lot of it is propaganda, and I do have my grievances with how it's handled and a lot of the things that I was taught that were truly American and the way to be or the way to show patriotism, here's what I've had to sit with. What looks like uncritical flag waving is for a lot of Americans something more personal than political. It's about your grandmother that immigrated with nothing and had to start over, not knowing the language, a grandpa that served in uniform for their country. See, for Americans, the flag isn't always about representing the government or the country as a whole. Sometimes it's representing something extremely personal. Well, I have a flag behind me. It's because that's the flag that was on my dad's coffin because he served his country in the Vietnam War. No matter what my reservations are about my government, my country, the Vietnam War, even my father, that still is a point of pride to me to display that flag because it reminds me of him, his pride, his sacrifice, and everything that he went through in the name of his country, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. I feel like patriotism, no matter what country it comes from, is sort of an armor, and that's different than patriotism as an identity. From here, I can see both. And they're definitely not the same thing. And assuming they are, I think it's how you can misread an entire country and their population. Okay, this is a part where we're going to get a little real. There's a British tendency to read American enthusiasm as if it's stupidity. It comes from the assumption that if you're optimistic, you must not understand the situation. And if you did fully understand the situation, you'd be much more resigned. But that is not true. Hope is not the same as ignorance. It's not to say that there aren't ignorant people in the United States of America, just like there are ignorant people here in England and the rest of the UK and Commonwealth and the rest of the world. It's just that a lot of Americans choose to believe that things can be different. And that's not exactly the same as not knowing or recognizing how bad things actually are. The problem isn't the hope or the optimism. The problem is when that hope and optimism gets weaponized. Hope can actually be enormously powerful. Hope helped build the United States to what it actually is today. Hope brought me to England for a better life for my family and a better future for my daughter. I'll never stop being hopeful no matter where I live and no matter what anybody says to me about my beliefs. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, because he said it better than I ever could, we must accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope. That's the United States of America to me, all of it. The disappointment, the hope, together at the same exact time. And I don't think it's naive at all. I think it's honest And I think it's planning for the future. I know parts of me are American in ways that I can't change, in ways I'll never change, in ways I'm not sure I want to change. The directness, the optimism underneath the cynicism, the instinct that things should be fair, even when they clearly aren't at the moment. I know which parts of the story I don't believe anymore about the United States of America, but none of those things make me love my native country any less. No matter what narratives others want to spin about me in order to make themselves more comfortable, I'm always going to love the United States of America through an honest lens, not through a sugar coated, propagandized one. Because I believe that with any kind of love comes a great responsibility to not only be honest about what that love means, but to be honest about how you can use that love to make the object of affection better. My life is just the evidence that I have that seeing things differently can change everything in your life. And that comes with being honest. That is what different looks like. It's messier than the version they sell you, but it's also more authentic, more real, and oh my God, so much more powerful. With endless love and hope for a brighter future, happy 250th United States of America.